So, welcome everyone to today's conversation. Super, super excited to have Cindy here and talk about what she does. Amazing work in terms of ADHD parent coaching. And I've had the privilege working with Cindy now, and we're actually collaborating for those of you that want to learn both ADHD parent coaching and also be a coach on the ICF path. And by combining our certified professional coach program with Cindy's ADHD parent coach program, you have that opportunity. So very, very excited about it. Cindy is going to be walking you through lots of great information about what it is she does. Quick housekeeping. Yes, we are recording. Yes, the recording will go on YouTube. So if you want to stay off camera and unmute, you're welcome to do that. And if you want to come on live, we love it. Absolutely love to have you come on live, ask your questions, participate in the conversation. It's a lot of fun and it's engaging when we do that. If you want to stay in the background and you still have questions and you want to ask them, very simply, you can put them in the chat box. You can put them in the Q&A box. We will be monitoring those throughout, and I'll be feeding the questions to Cindy as appropriate for the topic and as time allows. So with that, Cindy, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself, tell them about you, and move ahead.
Absolutely. And thank you, Kathy. I love that we get to do this together. I think it's just such a win-win for everybody. So thank you. All right. Well, excuse me. So what we're going to, don't know how that happened, but that's what we prepare for, right, Kath?
Right. That's what technology is for us. It's all good.
Hang on 1 second. If I can't get mine, you have yours.
I can, yeah, you said you emailed it, so I can grab that. And
I should have it. 1 second. Well, while that, yeah, I have it again. So let me just share. Presenter mode. And I'm sharing my screen.
awesome.
Perfect. Okay. As I was saying, and you will see if you work with me that one of the things, and Kathy and I just spoke about this, one of the beautiful things about coaching, and especially when you're doing anything like this, you always have to be cognitively flexible, really stay in your moments and be present and not get caught up in all of the worries. So here we are again. We're going to be talking about putting parents at the center of support and the value of ADHD parent coaching. My goal is to share with all of you my passion and my reasoning for doing parent coaching, and specifically ADHD parent coaching.
Yeah, and Cindy, we have a request. Can you show just the full slide instead of the presenter mode?
Oh, I guess I shared the wrong screen. 1 second.
Sorry. It was a lot for people to take in, so that was a request in the chat box.
It was a good request because I didn't mean to do that one. Is that better?
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're really good now. Okay. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about myself. My name again is Cindy Goldrich. I am a board certified ADHD coach. I am also a mental health counselor. And years ago, when I decided I wanted to support families and kids with ADHD, I found that the therapeutic model just didn't make sense, because I do not look at ADHD and learning challenges, things like that, as a deficit. I look at it as a difference with challenges. So I'm not saying therapy doesn't have its role in treatment, but in general, I find that the coaching model is what really is needed. We need education, we need support, we need tools, we need strategies, we need accountability, we need structure to our sessions, right? So all of that led me to the world of coaching. About almost 15 years ago, I developed my program called Calm and Connected, parenting children. It's actually children and teens with ADHD and executive function challenges. I have been training professionals who now run this program in English, in Spanish. It's now translated into Chinese, And it's being translated as we speak into Japanese and into Arabic. It's wildly successful. I've written 2 books that you can see there. I also go into school districts and I train the teachers, because the teachers don't always know how to work with these kids. It's not in their teacher training. And so that's enough about me. I want this presentation to be valuable for all of you. So if you have any questions at any point, please feel free to either, if you're sharing your video, then you can just ask your question live. If not, you can always put it in the chat, as Kathy said, and she'll let me know. Okay. So here's where we're going to start. Very often I get a phone call from a parent, and their first question is, how can I get my child to, and then fill in the blank, get more organized, manage his time, be more motivated, socialize better, be more compliant, try harder, stop having meltdowns, just be easier. This is what parents want to know. And I always say that to me is a red flag. And I'll tell you why. I don't think anyone outside can get their kid to do anything, because the parent is the one that is there all the time. The parent is setting the tone, the pace, the knowledge, everything else. And if parents don't know what parents don't know, they're unintentionally sometimes exacerbating the problems with their child. So whereas when I started out coaching, I did work with the high school kids and the college kids, I quickly found that it wasn't as effective if the parents didn't understand the journey of their child and really shift how they worked with them. So when does a parent first reach out to me for support? Well, Kathy, I don't know why that's doing that. I've never had that happen. So do you want to share it from your end?
I can do that. Let me get that up.
And believe me, I know this by heart, so I can also just do it without the PowerPoint if need be, but
we're good. So we're going to go here. And this is what you want.
yeah. So if you could advance that to all those pictures, that's great. So parents reach out for various reasons. Either their kid is just bouncing off the walls and they can't get their kid to do anything, can't get their kid to focus or anything, and they're like, help. Or their child comes home and is all disorganized, that backpack that's just chaos all the time. Or maybe their child is just withdrawn and anxious or depressed. Or maybe there's so much arguing going on. A lot of times, and parents don't really know or understand that along with ADHD is so much emotional dysregulation that the child is just trying to push the world off, not just their parent. And so there's a lot of defiance. So I help parents understand that and have the tools for that. Then, of course, we have the kid that is just overwhelmed and just is giving up, or the teenager who just feels like, you don't get me, you don't understand me, just leave me alone, right? So we can go to the next slide. So there are a few different, and I'll let you just build the whole thing. Normally I would do this step by step, but that'll be easier for me. Thank you, Kathy. So how do we start? Well, sometimes the school starts with a plan. You may be familiar with what an IEP is or a 504 plan, so that they are figuring out how can we help this child. Or maybe the pediatrician is going to suggest medication. Here's the one thing: pills don't teach skills. Pills can be very valuable, right? Um, but even that, we have to help parents understand, how do I help my kid manage the medication? What if my child doesn't want medication? What if I don't want to use medication? So to me, that's not a solution in and of itself. We really need to work with the parent. Sometimes friends and family suggest different parenting approaches. Well, guys, here's my philosophy. We have to parent the child we have, not the child we thought we'd have, not the child we wish we'd have, not the child we'd have if our mother-in-law got her way, but that unique child. So unless our family and friends have walked in our shoes with our specific child, chances are their parenting approach is not necessarily going to be as helpful. Then, of course, sometimes a child starts therapy. And as I said in the beginning, you could talk to a child until you're blue in the face about why are they having a hard time focusing, but this is a neurobiological disorder. This is inherent in their neurobiology. Sometimes we send the child for testing, which can be very, very helpful. You do want to get a good profile of the child. But again, very often when a parent has their child tested, they'll get a whole report. The practitioner might have a page or two of suggestions about the child, but that's not helping the parent. Sometimes, and I've got plenty of coaches who work with the high school and the college kids, and they're excellent. But I always say to parents, when they call me up and they say, well, my kid just needs a coach. I say, okay, great. Let me ask you a question. On a scale of 1 to 10, if you were to say to your child, Johnny, I found a coach for you. This coach is going to help you figure out why you're having such a hard time getting organized and focusing, and why you don't do what you say you're going to do. And you wake up in the morning full of ideas and then nothing gets done. I've got someone that can work with you. If 10 is, wow, mom, that's great. I really want that person. And 1 is, ma, just get off my back. I've got this. I just have to try harder. I can do all this. Just leave me alone and stop nagging me. And so I'll say to the parent, where do you think that kid is? Very often the parent will say, oh, my kid says, just leave me alone. And that's when I start to talk to them about parent coaching, because the child is not yet coachable. And I'm sure, Kathy, you know that in your world of training, people will want coaching, but it's work. You've got to be committed to the process. So before the child is going to be committed, I very often work with the parent, and then the child might be ready, because we shift the whole dynamic of that relationship, right? But all of these things take time. And that's why my suggestion is always, if your kid's been red flagged for ADHD or executive function challenges or learning challenges, whether or not they've got a diagnosis, whether or not they've got any other treatment, you need a script for the parent coaching. And you'll see I'll talk about this a little bit later on as well. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so the parent says, I need help for my child. Will you please coach him? And that's what I've been talking about, that I can't necessarily coach him unless he's coachable. So let's go on to the next. And I verbalized most of this because I don't always see my next slide now. But does the child want to make the changes? And are they willing to partner with a coach? Is the child ready to do the work? Right? Are they capable of working effectively with a coach? A lot of times, if there's so much emotional dysregulation, they're so shut down, they're not ready to work with the coach. And are there other things going on that might impede the coaching process itself? We have to make sure, that's okay, you can switch to the next one, but we have to make sure, is anxiety leading the train here? Is depression leading what's going on? Is there drug and alcohol use? All of these things. But as I tell my coaches when I do the training, you still can do the parent coaching. You're just kind of have to make sure that they've got that team of support. So parents need their own education, their tips, their tools, their strategies, which is why regardless if they're on medication or they've got support in school, the parent needs their own support. So let's go to the next one. By the way, before I just keep talking, does anyone have a question, or is this resonating with anyone that you want to just jump in and say anything? I don't want to just over talk here. We're good?
Yeah, so far it looks good.
Okay. All right. So why is parent coaching necessary? Well, first of all, parents are with the child all the time. Even if the child's at school, when that child comes back, they're still dealing with what went on at school. So the parent needs to know the best way to diffuse their child, to support their child, to encourage them on all of these different things. When we work with parents, primarily initially through that Calm Connected workshop series I spoke about, but even when we're coaching them one-on-one, we want to give the parents the tools on, how do I diffuse my child when this is going on? How do I set up communication so that they trust me, so they hear me and they're not just saying, leave me alone, but also, how do I make sure that I understand my child? So that's part of it. Let's go on to the next one. Kids are not yet capable of utilizing the skills that they're working on in therapy. If a child goes to therapy once a week, if they haven't mastered what the therapist is working on with them, where do we go with that? Right? We see that in schools all the time. A child could be in speech language, right? And they're getting, speech in the classroom. If the teacher doesn't know what the child is working on in that speech class, we're not going to get very far, right? So that's a problem too. Also, parents don't always recognize how their own communication skills are affecting the child. If you don't realize something like, and I'm sorry, I'm just moving my camera over. If you don't realize something, let's say working memory, I'll explain just very briefly what working memory is and how that impacts. There are three kinds of memory, right? There's short term memory. I need juice, eggs, and milk. There's long term memory. Um, what was your childhood phone number? But working memory, that's when you're using your brain search engine, where you're holding on to things and integrating them with what you already knew and all the new information. So very often a parent will say to their child, hey, Johnny, do me a favor, go upstairs, get your backpack, your shoes, your tennis racket. And on the way down, could you check and see if I shut my light off and grab my water bottle for me? And when the child comes down with maybe one or two things, right, what's the emotion in the parent? An emotion very often when I ask parents doing these presentations is, "Oh, I'm so frustrated. I'm so angry at him. He doesn't listen to me. He's just defiant. He just doesn't care," right? But then when I explain what working memory is, and when I talk about that, when you have a child who has ADHD, statistically, their working memory is often much weaker, having nothing to do with their intelligence. Their intelligence may be off the chart, but their working memory may be weaker. So then the question is, okay, now how do you feel? Well, now I feel like, okay, now I need to go into teaching mode, or I need to go into support mode or coaching mode. I need to help my child. So, what are some things I could do? Well, I could break down my list into steps, or I could write the list down. I could give them some visual cues. Whatever it is I'm doing, it's a lot less frustrating. And I'm not battling my child. I'm not looking at my child as he doesn't care. And I'm not nagging my child, why don't you listen to me? Right? So already that dynamic is going to change when I can support the parent in understanding that child. And that's why I say parents are loving and caring. I mean, most parents want to be good parents. They don't want to be battling with their child, but they don't realize, they don't know what they don't know. And so parents often are unaware of and misunderstand how ADHD and all these other things are impacting learning, motivation, behavior, and honestly, the whole family system. How Johnny's getting along with Sally, how Sally feels about that I'm spending so much extra time with Johnny. All of those things are impacted. You want to build the next piece? Okay. The stress and tension between the parent and the child can be so intense that's why I was saying at the beginning. Parent could have a great suggestion, and the kid's like, I don't want it. I don't trust you. I don't need it. Leave me alone. That's the solution. Or the child is depressed or anxious, and they've got so much negative self talk. And in coaching, we deal a lot with what's the story you're telling yourself? What's the language you're using? I want to help the parent understand that. And I want to help the parent help their child think about that self talk. And then the next piece, and parents aren't able to co parent. This is such a big issue. I believe that parents may love each other, may have a wonderful relationship with their spouse, but they were parented differently. So they have different concepts. Very often, one of the parents says, oh, that was me as a kid. My parents were just really strict with me. I just have to be strict with the kid, right? And the other parent is saying, but look what happens when we're really strict. We're fighting all the time. We're not getting anywhere. So, as a parent coach, I help the parents co parent much more effectively. Next slide. So, and you can build this whole one. Kids can really lose their emotional control. And what feelings does that conjure up in parents? I always say, does it look a little like that? Just that angry, frustrated, ugh, right? But what do the kids need from the parents in these moments? They need someone who's calm and in control and safe and accepting. And so that's why the workshop that I do at the center of the work is called Calm and Connected. And it's not just the kids that we need to get calm, it's really the parents. So we spend a lot of time helping parents learn how to be calm for themselves. Go ahead. So, the greatest impact that parents can have on their children with ADHD is to help them understand what is truly getting in the way of meeting their goals and providing them with the knowledge, tools, and strategies to succeed in school, at home, socially, and in life. Now, you'll notice this says parent training has been identified as one of the most important variables in helping children. I personally don't like the idea of parent training. Although, if you want to research, you're going to see most of the studies talk about parent training. I, of course, believe in parent coaching. I don't think parents want to be trained, and I think coaching is so much more than just what training would imply. So, go ahead, please. So, the goal of parent coaching is first and foremost, we do want to provide a lot of actual education about what is ADHD, what are executive functions, what's appropriate developmental behavior. We have to start with that, right? And then, of course, we're going to provide support for parents to learn to accept their child as their child. There's a lot of things we do to help them kind of calm down because they look at their child and they say, but he has so much potential. If I just push him a little more, if I just make sure he gets his homework done. My question to parents is, okay, so he's in third grade. I understand you want to make sure all that gets done. But when does that stop? When are we willing to back off of helping our child? And, we talk a lot in parent coaching about enabling versus supporting, right? When are we willing to back off and let the child feel the impact of their own actions and inaction? But we don't want to just say, okay, Johnny, you're in eighth grade now, you got to do it yourself. We have to help parents understand and forgive themselves why they have been maybe over helping all those years. It may have been appropriate. That's why, as I said, we talk about enabling versus supporting. But the other thing we need to do is help them help their child kind of wean off of their support. So that's a step by step process. I have parents in 11th whose kids are in 11th grade. They're like, how is this kid going to go to college? I'm still doing everything for him. I've got to just stop. Right. So coaching can work at any age child. Um, we want to provide, of course, the tips and the tools and the strategies, a lot of empathy because there's so much shame, so much guilt. I once had a parent call me and say, I'm having a really hard time with my child. Can you help me? He's defiant, all these other things. So I say, okay, how old is your child? The parent said he's 44. He said, I didn't know about this ADHD thing. I've been parenting him all wrong, and he's still not even successful in his own life. Right. So we have to work with them wherever they are. And sometimes I do go into schools, and my coaches do go into schools, not to be that advocate to fight for the child's rights, but really to be that transition to teach the teacher and support the teacher in helping the child differently, because you acquire so much knowledge about these challenges of ADHD and executive function that you're really able to help the teacher as well. Kath, can you do the next slide, please? Okay. So, who is parent coaching appropriate for? Oops, yeah, there you go. Well, as I just mentioned, age of the child. To me, unless the child's fully launched, parents need support. I just got a call from a parent today who said, you know what? We ended up moving towns because my mother was really ill. So 3 years ago, we moved towns. And now I just feel like the school district isn't good. And I don't know where to begin with this whole process of choosing districts and everything else. Coach is going to help them, right? Just talk through all these issues and understand the complexity. Does it matter if the child's had a formal diagnosis? Absolutely not. As I always say, parents struggling, we're here to help you. I am here also with a full Rolodex. I'm going to be able to support that parent in figuring out what kind of support do they need. Do they need a formal diagnosis? What would be involved in that? How do you find the right diagnostician? Economic situation of the parent. One of the blessings of the work that I do, because I do so much group work and because my coaches do so much group work, is I don't believe anyone should ever be turned down because they can't afford services. So if you're running a group, you can let someone in who can't afford, right? And so it doesn't matter the economic situation. Does it matter the emotional status of the child? If this child is severely impaired, it doesn't. Because even if that child is hospitalized with depression, anxiety, whatever, that parent still needs help. So you're still there to help the parent. But of course, you're going to want to make sure that that child is getting proper support. Same thing with the parent. Parent may be in their own treatment because they're dealing with tremendous anxiety or depression. I have found, and this is not to put down therapists at all, most therapists are not trained enough in ADHD and executive function and really understanding it. So I collaborate with the therapist. I'll work with the therapist so that they can supply the right therapeutic support and I can supply the support in terms of understanding how the ADHD is impacting. And as I mentioned before, marital relationship, I deal with parents, when they're in an intact relationship or when they're in separate homes, whether they get along well, whether they don't. Next slide. Okay. So parents really are the gatekeepers. This is just, oops.
Oh, sorry. I wasn't sure how many points.
I just wanted to show you that there has been so much research done, right, on why, why this is all so complex. Parents are the gatekeepers. So if a parent is fearful about using medication, but medication might be the right thing, again, I always tell parents, I do not diagnose, I do not medicate. My job is education and support, but I am going to help you understand what medication is about and why you may want to consider it. And if you do consider it, what are all the ramifications, right? Parents worry about being blamed. There's shame. There's so much shame. People are going to say, oh, it's my fault that my kid isn't doing well in school or whatever else. So they're scared to talk to other people. Parent coach is going to really understand. There's so much misconception about what the treatment really involves. Parents are scared to get their kids diagnosed because they think, oh, well, that means someone's going to have to put them on medication. So we want them to see that treatment involves so many things, right? And again, parents are just unsure. They just don't know who to go to get the support. I've had so many people when they reach out to me say, I didn't know about parent coaching. Where were you 15 years ago? Where was your book 15 years ago? My answer is, I don't know. I wish I had it too, right? We all need that support. Okay, now you can go to the next slide, please. So the goals of parent coaching are first and foremost to reduce the stress. Because as you saw, the name of my workshop is called Calm and Connected. We know that without calm, there is no learning. Your wise lectures, your bribes, your incentives, all of those other things, nothing is going to happen unless there is calm. So our first goal is to calm down that family system. And then, of course, we want to teach parents effective rules and strategies, appropriate rules, expectations, and boundaries. I have so many tools and strategies um, that help parents knowing things like, what kind of boundaries are going to be supportive and not triggering? What kind of consequences are going to teach skills and not just be punitive? So we talk about all of those different things. We want to teach parents effective communication skills. And in teaching the parents, we're helping them teach their child. But guess what? They are learning how to communicate effectively with their child in teaching their child how to effectively communicate. We also use collaborative problem solving because I do believe that in many cases, these are the kids that are very strong willed. These are the kids that need some sense of power in their lives. So when we do that top down parenting, it's going to trigger them. So we talk about how do we collaborate with them? How do we empower that child? When is it safe to collaborate? And when do I need to just, put forth my expectations? We talk about, as I said, discipline, enabling versus supporting, and reducing all that shame. and developing the self-regulation, improving the child's self-talk, and reducing the impact that their challenges are having on them. Okay, next slide. What do you need to know to become an effective parent coach? Well, I teach a lot about what is the diagnostic process, what is ADHD, so we're going to absolutely know all of that. We're going to look at the impact of various medications. As I said, I don't go deeply into the medications, but I want everyone to understand what meds do and what they don't do. We want to understand the options and the limitations in school modifications and accommodations. I always tell parents, be careful what you fight for because you may get it. Because just because you get those accommodations doesn't mean the teacher knows how to really implement it and doesn't mean that the child wants it. Parents are so excited because, wow, now my kid gets extra time on tests, but my kid won't go and take the extra time. So that's where we need to work with the child and work with the parent to help them, be more accepting of that if that's appropriate, right? The knowledge and expertise in teaching and facilitating communication and collaboration skills, and also, of course, those foundational coaching skills. One of the reasons I've been so excited to partner with Kathy is that my course, and I'll tell you the details of it, but my course, we're going to utilize those coaching skills, but I'm not going to be teaching you those foundational coaching skills, but I wholeheartedly believe you need them, right? So that's where that comes into play. Next slide. These are just a few quotes from parents that I've worked with. I understand my child so much more, and as a result, I have so much more patience. I feel confident as a parent, knowing when I can push and when it's okay to just pull back and let things happen. I know I have the tools and the insights I need to set up routines and boundaries that make sense for me and for my child. My house is so much calmer and so much more enjoyable. I hear this all the time, that there's laughter again, right? And my teenager actually thanked me and wants to spend more time with me together. That's huge because so many times the teenagers are just like, leave me alone. But we help them build back that relationship, which is vital. Next one. So the added benefits of parent coaching. Parents who have received coaching are more effective in collaborating with their child's therapeutic providers, right? Parents are more able to participate in discussions regarding the impact and effectiveness of medication. So when they're speaking to the psychiatrist who's doing the medication, they're like one step up, right? They really understand their child. So what the child isn't saying, because the child's not always a good reporter, right, about how the medication is impacting them, the parent can help out with that. Parents are much more effective advocates in school. And is there more to the slide? So parent coaching has been identified as the gold standard in treatment for children with behavioral challenges. And again, that's why it says parent training and not parent coaching. Go ahead. So let me tell you a bit about my program, okay? And you can load all of this if you want. Not parents, people come to me and they say, well, what are the requirements to be in your program? My requirement, first and foremost, is passion. I have people come to me who already are mental health professionals, who are already professional coaches, gone through a program like Kathy's. Sometimes they're teachers, they're nurse practitioners, they're school psychologists, they're learning specialists, they're occupational therapists, they're speech language pathologists, but sometimes they are just parents. And I don't mean just parents, but they're parents who have now raised their child. Their child is now either launched or pretty far along the way to launching. And they just feel so passionate that no one else should ever go on this journey that I went on to struggle to figure out, I want to help parents. So those are the people that I coach. That I train. The training consists of 24 hours of live interactive classes via Zoom, and then another 12 hours of asynchronous where I pair you with one or two buddies and I give you specific assignments to work on with that buddy. People love that because very often the people, of course, that come to me for my work are already passionate about the world of ADHD and everything. So to be with a bunch of other people who share that passion. They become your lifelong cohort to really work with to do all of this work. The training is approved for 36 hours, 24 of which are core competency, and another 12 are resource development. And you can, as Kathy said, you can combine this with her course and then be able to apply toward the ACC and the PCC and the MCC. The training fee includes your first year annual fee to facilitate the Common Connected Workshop Series. I'll explain that in more detail because I have a slide. I'm going to show that to you. But very often coaches do want to be able to use my program that I developed as a way to support parents, because it's, even if they're working one-on-one with parents, it's so powerful, it's sequential, it's got everything in it. And the visuals are very helpful, you know, the graphics, that I send out tons of supportive materials with it. So it's part of the licensing fee. You don't have to maintain that license. What that licensing fee gives you is both use of that workshop and also ongoing. You're also going to get a lot of support from marketing, because we know at the end of the day, it's great to have all this training, but if you can't make a living, it's not going to be effective. So I do have marketing woven in throughout the training. And I do give you 2 PowerPoints that you can use for parent groups where you're doing education for the parents. And I teach you how to subtly use it to market yourself and your programs. One is called Top 10 Strategies for Parenting Kids with ADHD. One is called Skills for Success, right? And they're really great programs. Let's do
It's
that.
ICF research says the top 2 sources of new clients for coaches are referrals and public speaking. And to me, these are such an obvious win, because you're doing your public speaking. So you're doing the training, it's happening before you move into the coaching mode, and it's getting yourself out there and setting it up. So it's a fabulous source of clients. And you can even sell the training, so you can get paid to be getting new clients.
Exactly
it's,
right.
it's such an obvious win-win.
Yep, it really is. It's so powerful. It's so powerful.
Yeah.
So this is just in case you're interested, because you may, after this webinar that I'm doing with Kathy, you may feel like, well, I don't know if I want to be trained as a coach, but gosh, I need this for my own kid, right? So this is what the Common Connected program is all about. The first session is a 2-hour session of really understanding the social and emotional impact that ADHD and executive function has on learning, motivation, behavior, and the whole family system. Parents can take this independently, this first session, and then decide if they want to take the rest of the 6 sessions. I've got tons of therapists and neuropsychologists and psychiatrists, lots of school guidance counselors, and everyone who, as soon as a child is red flagged or diagnosed, they'll say, take session 1 of Cindy's workshop. She's going to do a lot better job at helping you understand your child than I am with, you know, our 15-minute conversation at the end or the pamphlet I'm going to give you. And then that's the rest of the workshop. As I said, it's been very effective.
Yeah, there's a great question in the box. Did you see an uptick in your coaching services with the pandemic and more parents staying home with kids?
Yes, that's a great question. I did, for multiple reasons. One, because the stress level just went through the roof. We all know that.
Mhm.
2, because now they had to deal with actually supporting their kids more directly, right? With the Zoom, with the
All day
homeschooling.
long.
So how do I do this? I don't know what to do. But the third thing, and I think this is probably what you were noticing in your question, is that parents were seeing their children in action more. They were seeing how distracted their child really does get and how hard their child really is trying and not getting anywhere. It was sort of like that big bowl of spaghetti. It seemed like they just kept eating, but they weren't getting anything done. They weren't going anywhere. So parents would call and they'd say, I get it now. My kid really is struggling. Can you support me? What is this all about? Yeah. Is there a follow-up to that? Oh, yes, it makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense is
Yeah.
the
Oh, yeah.
response. It totally does.
Huge uptick. I will say,
Yeah.
selfishly, it's been it's been good. But I will say this, even now that it's over, I think not over. I mean, I know the pandemic's not over, but we're getting back to some semblance of normal, and hopefully next year they are going to be in school. I think the cat's out of the bag. I think parents are just they're understanding that there is parent coaching available. I'm seeing a huge uptick on my website of people just, using the search term parent coaching. So that's been great.
Earlier, you said you people wondered where you were 15 years ago. Cindy, I wish I knew you 20, 25 years ago. That's when I was going through this. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's true, right? Yeah.
yeah. Oh my gosh. And yeah, I had no clue what I was doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
I think there's another slide.
Actually, I was clicking and it finished.
Okay. Oh, because I didn't put it on your welcome slide. That's what it would have been.
Right. That's okay.
I do
Yeah.
want to tell you, and then I see there are some other questions. My next training class does start September 21st. That's a Tuesday. I am in Boulder, Colorado. So let me just move this over. I'm in Boulder, Colorado. So I always quote things in mountain time. So mountain time, it starts at 3:30. So if you're on the East Coast, that means it's at 5:30. Okay. If you're on the West Coast, that means it's at 2:30. If you're Central, that means it's at 4:30. I've got people from all over the world that take this. So I've actually had a whole cohort take it from Saudi Arabia. They used to wake up at 2 and 3 in the morning
Oh,
to
wow.
do it. But yeah, so I've got people from all over the world now because people realize, we need this support. So.
Yeah. This is awesome. So this is a great opportunity, everyone. Whether you want to put questions in the question box or if you want to come on live, you're welcome to do that. Um, I'm super excited about this because the impact this will have on parents, on families, on kids, the ripple effect over time is so huge. The question came in, how often does the course meet?
It meets once a week for 2 hours a session. And then during the week, you will meet with your buddies, your cohort. Yeah.
Awesome.
There is
Excellent.
some homework. Homework is not overwhelming. The only book that you're required to read is my book, 8 Keys to Parenting Children with ADHD, because a lot of the work is the book is based on the work, but it reinforces it and gives you a lot of languaging for it. And then each week you'll be meeting with your buddy, as I said, and you'll have a few questions where you're going to submit the answers to me.
Good morning. Thank you or good afternoon, or wherever people are. I don't know where people are. It's good morning here for me. You can see that I'm a teacher and that we're out of school. And so I have a little bit of a relaxed look going right now.
That's awesome.
So, Cindy, can I learn a little bit more about your background prior to doing this and what it was that drew you to this work, I guess? If you had personal experience with it, were you in the classroom? Were you parenting or like I can see your credentials, but just sort of your personal drawing to this, if that makes sense. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. I'm in the middle of a juggle about what direction I want to go with my coaching. When I did the program a year ago through Kathy, I was executive function coaching all the way. Like that's what I wanted to do and that's how I wanted to kind of take the direction I wanted to take it, because I'm a teacher with middle school children and high school children who are really developing those frontal lobes as quickly as they can, but not quite enough. And so then that's made me sort of expand, because one of the things we all know now in education is what we do with kids with diagnoses actually translates really, really beautiful way to all children. And really to all parents. And that doesn't mean I don't mean to diminish and dilute the needs of families with ADHD students. I just mean, this has made us really look and say, this is working so well. Why don't we try it with someone who doesn't have a diagnosis? And it works really well in that way also. So I'm just kind of, that's my professional, like, what am I going to do with this? And so I'm kind of curious as to what your professional background with that is as well.
Sure. And I
Thank
will answer that in a few different ways. My background, as I said, I was a mental health counselor. I also have this running throughout my family. So this was very personal for me. I was that parent, just like Kathy said, who was like, you don't get my kid. I don't get my kid. I know he's bright. I know I have nieces and nephews, same thing, off the chart intelligence, but like, what's going on? So as I did the research, I started learning about organizations like CHADD. For those of you who don't know what CHADD is it's CHADD. It's the National Organization for Children and Adults with Attention Deficit Disorder. I started almost 15 years ago going to the national conferences. I started learning about coaching, and I realized, that makes sense. So I got trained as a coach, again, almost 12, 15 years ago, so that I could work with the high school and college kids. Now, you ask about if I've been a teacher in the classroom. Interestingly, never. However, once I was coaching so much, my parents were becoming more successful in working with their kids. They were going into the school districts, they were trying to explain. They would bring me into the schools, and I found, wow, these teachers are really resonating with me. They're wanting more of my information. So then schools were asking me, could you train all our teachers? So I've been going around the country for years doing full day teacher training. At the same time, my daughter was going to college. She wanted to become a special ed elementary school teacher. She now has her master's, 7 years later. When she graduated college as an elementary ed special ed teacher, I had her sit through my full day training. She said, "Ma, I didn't learn that stuff." They're still not teaching this to the gen ed teachers and the special ed teachers that are coming out of the colleges. So she co-wrote my second book with me, ADHD, Executive Function and Stress in the Classroom. We speak literally every day, but very often about these kids, so that her work as a teacher has informed my work as a coach. My work as a coach for parents has informed her work as a teacher, because we know that if you don't understand both sides of it, so that's why so many of the people I now train as parent coaches are just like you, Karen, who are still working in the school systems, but know that I need to understand what goes on when this kid goes home.
Right.
I need to understand the family system. I need to understand how to support this kid in a bigger way, because so much of what I teach the parents works in the schools. In fact, when I do teacher trainings, they all say, this is good for all our kids.
Yeah.
I always say we could build a better school. Let's just start with executive function training and everything else.
Well, it's interesting too, because I think parents who come in, who would identify themselves as like, I was a really good student, so I'm so confused about my child's behavior or my child's prowess in the classroom or whatever.
Right.
And that's great that you're a really good student, but have you ever had to solve a problem? Like, we actually are stronger when we have to use those muscles that help us navigate complicated situations. So if excellent performance landed in your lap, great. Do you know how to break down a 6-month project into small chunks for your child every 2 weeks?
Right.
No, because you never had to do that. Okay. So, I just feel like the stuff that we do for these kids and these families is applicable. I'm not a special ed. I don't have a certification, particularly with a diverse, neurodiverse population,
Right.
but the kids that I do work with would completely benefit from this kind of stuff.
Exactly. And
So
not to
thank
go,
you.
yeah, no, absolutely. And one other thing I'll say is, teachers will say to the parent, Johnny's having a really hard time organizing and everything. Could you go home and organize him? And the parent is saying, and who's coming home and organizing me? Right. So that's why the educators also need to understand all of this.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I want to share something that came up when you joined, Karen, and you talked about being an executive function coach. Okay. And I raised ADHD children. So I never heard that term until I talked to Sunday. And
That's
so
right.
if you told me you were an executive function coach, I think you're coaching executives in the corporate space.
Right.
And I wonder, in doing this kind of work, how you put that out there, how you market it so that parents get, no, this is how your kid functions. We're talking about your ADHD kid. We're not talking about the executive in corporate America.
Right.
Because to me, it was, I don't know what you're talking about when you say executive function, until I started talking to Cindy, enough like, oh, that's what that means.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing I'm not the only one who doesn't understand some of the terminology.
So thank you. And let me explain that. And it's interesting that you bring that up, Kathy, because 15 years ago, when I did start doing this work and this learning,
Mm-hmm.
even the professionals weren't talking about executive function. We didn't start talking about that until about 10 years ago or so. And you're 100% right, which is why when I talk about marketing, we take that into account. Here's the nutshell on what executive function means.
Mm-hmm.
Executive function, if you make a fist, here's your brain. Here's the front part of your brain. Okay. That's where your executive function system is. Here's the back part of the brain. That's where your emotional system is. And of course, I'm simplifying this, right? But the brain develops from the back of the brain to the front of the brain. The executive function system is what's in charge of, it's your higher level thinking. It's what's in charge of your initiation, your organizing, your planning, your time management, your self-talk, your emotional regulation, your flexibility. All of those things have to do with your executive function system. And what we know is that because it's the last part of the brain to develop, right? A child could be uber intelligent. He could have the highest IQ in the grade. He could have very weak executive function skills. So we also know that in the world of ADHD, kids can be up to 25 to 30% delayed in their executive function skill development. So that's even harder for them because the expectations, I always say it's like how there's the kid in kindergarten who's like very tall and we expect him to be so much more mature, but he's still that same age. Same thing with executive functioning. The kid is so smart. Well, you know how to do this. You're so smart. Why can't you just do it? ADHD is not a problem of knowing what to do. It's a problem of doing what you know. And we know that if you've got executive function, if you've got ADHD, by definition, you've got deficits in your executive functioning. Does that help us understand a little bit about what executive function means? It's a poor name. It really is very confusing.
Yeah, I was thinking it more from the perspective of putting yourself out there as a parent ADHD coach and the choice of terms when you do that. I'm
Yeah.
curious for others in the group, how that served you in terms of hearing that explanation and definition. And then, of course, invite additional questions. We still have a few minutes. So, what else do people want to know? Give them a few. It may take them a minute or two to get
No,
anything typed in. So, while we're waiting for that, Cindy, what else do you want to share with us?
you know what? First of all, if you want to have a conversation with me, can I just put my contact info in the chat?
Absolutely. And of course, when I email a link to everybody from today's conversation, I will CC Cindy so that you can all see her email. And that way, if you want to reach out to her and learn more, you can do that.
Absolutely. And you can also look at my website, which I'll also put in there.
Mm-hmm.
So my website is PTS Coaching. And by the way, the reason it's called PTS Coaching is because it stands for Pathways to Success, because I believe these kids have this kind of pathway, right? They're not going to be your straight line kids that are just going to figure life out and just go. They're going to go all over the place. That's the other thing we talk about in the parent coaching. What about the kid that's not ready to launch, or the kid that isn't ready to go to college, or maybe college isn't the right thing for them? It's very comprehensive, but you'll see lots of information on my website, both about this program, about the Common Connected program. If you go to resources, you'll see lots of articles about all these different issues. And if you want to sign up for my newsletter, if maybe you're not ready to commit to doing this program now, please just either send me an email or go right on my website and you can sign up for my newsletter. I always send out things, you know, for parents, for educators, for coaches, for students. So that way you can keep in touch and know when other programs are going on.
Yeah. And we do have a description of Cindy's program up on our website as well. I put a direct link to it, where if you want to look straight at that parent coach program, you can do that and then access it from there as well. So it's a good overview of her program.
Perfect.
So awesome. So I am not seeing any additional questions in the chat box. So seems like you did such a great job explaining it, Cindy. They all got it. It just clicked.
Awesome. Very good. I thank you. Oh, I see someone wrote, I was looking for this.
Yeah, 25 years ago. Okay, now you've dated yourself because you're my age.
All right. But yeah, if any of the people you work with, or if you know anyone who could just use support, please feel free to give out my information. I'm always happy to talk to someone and see how we can help them.
Yeah. And of course, we're getting the thanks in there. So glad this was really helpful. So excellent. I believe we're complete, everybody. So thank you so much for being here. Do feel free to reach out to Cindy. And of course, if I can be helpful in something, let me know too. Cindy, thank you for being here and talking about your program. We're excited to have this recording that we can share on YouTube and link to and get the word out.
Very good. Thank you.